So Amos 3:7, the Name of God version says, "Certainly Adonai Yahweh doesn't do anything unless he first reveals his secrets to his servants, the prophets." Isaiah 32:1 says, "Behold, a king will reign in righteousness." Skipping down to verse 9, "Rise up, you women who are at ease. Hear my voice, you complacent daughters. Give ear to my speech. In a year and some days you will be troubled, you complacent women." Skipping down to verse 18, "My people will dwell in a peaceful habitation, in secure dwellings, and in quiet resting places." Jesus tells his disciples before he ascended back into heaven that he went to go prepare a place for them, that where he is, they may be also. Continuing, though hell comes down on the forest and the city is brought low. Isaiah 24:1, "Behold, the Lord makes everything. Behold, the Lord makes earth empty and makes it waste, distorts its surface." Skipping down a little to verse 4, "The earth mourns and fades away. The haughty people of earth languish." Skipping down to a piece of verse 6, "And few men are left." Skipping down a little bit, "At the merry-hearted sigh." Skipping down to verse 19, "The earth is violently broken. The earth is shaken exceedingly." 20, "The earth shall reel to and fro like a drunkard." 21, "It shall come to pass in that day." Again, "It shall come to pass in that day," talking about the day of the Lord, "that the Lord will punish on high the host of exalted ones." Could this be talking about the host of heaven being, the angels? Is this thing that's happening on earth because the war in heaven has started? That happens also in Revelation 12, where they're finally cast down during the tribulation period to the earth, and Satan himself is cast down. Isaiah 34:1, "Come near, you nations, to hear, and heed, you people. Let earth hear, and all that is in it, the world, and all things that come from it. For the indignation of the Lord is against all nations." Skipping down a little bit, "All the host of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled up like a scroll." Talking again about that Revelation 12 war. At the first of Revelation 12, almost 4 years ago now, the Revelation 12 sign with Virgo, that happened on Rosh Hashanah, which is in September of that year, September 2017. So almost 4 years ago, that clear signal in heaven, as a warning, I think. 4 clear years, and that sign had never happened. It hadn't lined up in that way in 7,000 years. "All their host shall fall down as the leaf falls from the vine, and as fruit falling from a fig tree. For my sword shall be bathed," and some translations say, "For my sword shall drink its fill in heaven," or shall have drunk its fill in heaven. "Indeed, it shall come down on Edom and on the people of my curse for judgment. The sword of the Lord is filled with blood. It is made overflowing with the blood of lambs and goats and the fat of kidneys of rams. Interestingly, some of those animals are often used to represent fallen angels. For it is the day of the Lord's vengeance, the year of recompense for the cause of Zion. Its streets shall be turned into pitch and brimstone. Its land shall become burning pitch. It shall not be quenched, night or day. Its smoke shall ascend forever. Isaiah 63. Who is this who comes from Edom with dyed garment from Basra? This one, which is emphasized in the original Hebrew, who is glorious in his apparel, traveling in the greatness of his strength. And there's like a space there, something like an M dash in current English. And someone else answers. I'm sure that this would have been confusing to Isaiah at the time, but someone else answers. We know now, based on some of the context around this passage and in other places in Isaiah, this is Jesus speaking in the Old Testament. I who speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Why is your apparel red, and your garments like one who treads in the winepress? Then again, answering, I have trodden the winepress alone, and from my peoples no one was with me. Skipping down a little bit, and I have stained my robes. For the day of vengeance is in my heart, and the year of my redeemed has come. See how the redemption of the Lord's redeemed, that day, the gathering together of them is linked with the day of vengeance starting, with the day of the Lord starting at the time. That's the day of his redeemed. For the day of vengeance is in my heart, and the year of my redeemed has come. I looked, but there was no one to help, and I wondered that there was no one to hold. Therefore, my own arm brought salvation for me. Isaiah 61:1. The Spirit of the Lord God is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to those who are bound, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor, which he did at his first coming, and the day of vengeance, which will happen with the second advent. Luke 13:6. A man had a fig tree planted, and came seeking fruit, and found none. Then he said to the keeper of his vineyard, Look, for 3 years I have come seeking my fruit on this tree, and found none. Cut it down. Skipping down a little bit. Sir, let it alone, and this year also, until I can fertilize it. And if it bears fruit, well. But if not, after that you can cut it down. See how the owner of the plantation wanted to go ahead and cut it down on that first year, but the caretaker of that piece of property pleaded with him to give him a little delay, to give him another year, for a total of 4 years, to give it one more chance to bear fruit before he decided to cut it down. This kind of delay of 4 in judgment happens often, or sometimes on the reverse. Where Lazarus, Mary and Martha are asking that Jesus come because Lazarus is sick, and he delays. And Lazarus, of course, dies and is dead 4 days. He's placed in a tomb. He's wrapped in, funeral clothes. He's started to decay at that point, and actually stink. But nevertheless, um, at first Mary and Martha are like, if you had just been here, you could have done something before he died, as if Jesus couldn't do something now that he's dead. He's all powerful, and he does raise him 4 days later. Matthew 24, 29, starting at the second half of that verse. Then the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven, and with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Now learn this parable from the fig tree. When its branch is yet become tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is near. We would contend that happened, that part, the fig tree began to put forth leaves when Israel became a nation again in May of 1948, 73 years ago this May. So you also, when you see these things, know it is near. Know it is near, even at the doors. And another thing, Jesus here, he doesn't often say this, even though he usually teaches in parables. Only occasionally, it's very rare that you'll see him emphasize something in this way and say, now learn this parable. This is an important parable, whatever it means, even if we're wrong about the meaning. This is emphasized. Assuredly, I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things be fulfilled. Psalm 90, starting at the second half of verse 2, even from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You turn men to destruction. Skipping down a little bit. For 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it is past, and like a watch in the night. Skipping down a little bit. For all our days have passed away in your wrath. We pass our years like a sigh. The days of our lives are 70 years, and if by reason of strength, this is in verse 10, they are 80 years, yet their boast is only labor and sorrow, for it is soon cut off, and we fly away. Oh, satisfy us early with your mercy. Skipping down a little bit. Let your work appear. Maybe that place he's prepared, is that what they're asking to appear? To cut this time period off sooner than 80 from Israel becoming a nation, to start that sooner than the 80-year mark. Jesus also said that except those days be shortened, talking about the tribulation period, no flesh would be saved. Luke 21:28 says, now when these things begin to happen, look up and lift your heads, because your redemption draws near. James 5:8, be ye also patient, establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh. Zechariah 12:3, and in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut into pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. Mark 13, again, notice how it's referenced, against it. Mark 13:29, so ye in like manner, when ye shall see these things come to pass, know it's nigh, no, it is nigh, even at the doors. Luke 21:36, watch therefore, and pray always, that you may be counted worthy to escape all these things that will come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. Joel 2:1, blow ye the trumpet in Zion, and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand. Skipping down a little bit. There hath not been ever the like, nor shall be any more after it. Meaning, like that day. Psalm 68:1. Let God arise, let his enemies be scattered, and let these who also hate him flee before him. As smoke is driven away, so drive them away. As wax melts before the fire, so let the wicked perish at the presence of God. But let the righteous be glad. Let them rejoice before God. Yes, let the righteous rejoice exceedingly. Sing to God. Sing praises to his name. Skipping down a little bit into verse 15. A mountain of God is the mountain of Bashan. That's in the north. It's that a coincidence, all this stuff coming from the north in these other verses? Is that like some kind of simile or analogy that the mountain of God will come from, above, just like Bashan is in the north? Why do you fume with envy, you mountains of many peaks? This is the mountain which God desires to dwell in. Yes, the Lord will dwell in it forever. The chariots of God are 20,000, even thousands of thousands. The Lord is among them as in Sinai, like when he came down and Moses stayed at Mount Sinai, in the holy place. Jeremiah 4:6, starting a little ways into that verse. For I will bring disaster from the north and great destruction. The lion has come up from his thicket, and the destroyer of nations is on his way. He has gone from his place. Skipping down into verse 9. In that day, says the Lord, that the heart of the king shall perish, and the heart of the princes, and the priests shall be astonished, and the prophets shall wonder. Skipping down a little bit. How long will I see the standard and hear the sound of the trumpet? I'm not going to do it here, but I think you should go read all of Jeremiah chapter 5. It explains really how people behave in modern times to a T, and basically how long should God let that go on without bringing it to judgment. 5:15 says, behold, I will bring a nation against you from afar. It is a mighty nation. It is an ancient nation, a nation whose language you do not know, nor can you understand what they say. Skipping down to verse 22, will you not tremble at my presence, who have placed the sand as the bound of the sea by a perpetual decree that it cannot go beyond it? And I didn't write this down, but it goes on to say, though the waves toss to and fro, they don't succeed at coming past where I've commanded them to stay. This ancient city, this ancient nation whose language you do not speak and you can't understand what they say, that's being referenced, this mighty ancient nation, is that the heavenly Jerusalem, this city that's coming down and angelic beings who speak. Um, I can't remember its name, Anoki or whatever the angelic language. Psalm 48. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised in the city of our God, his holy mountain. So the city is equated to the mountain. This mountain that's constantly being referenced in the Old Testament is clearly not some dirt mountain here on earth, especially if it's coming down. This is a city. Great is the Lord, and greatly to be praised in the city of our God, his holy mountain. Beautiful in elevation, and some translations that's beautiful, high up in the sky, is the joy of all the earth. Mount Zion in the far north, the city of the great king. Again, in the north. Skipping down a little bit. As soon as they, referencing the kings of the earth, as soon as they saw it, they were astounded. They were in panic. They took to flight. Trembling took hold of them there. Anguish as a woman in labor. And if you search that phrase about a woman in labor, you will see Old Testament passage after Old Testament passage, 30 or 40, and it's all about this fear at this thing that's coming to begin the day of the Lord. Isaiah 3:2, lift up a banner on the high mountain, raise your voice to them. Skipping down to verse 5, they come from a far country, from the end of heaven, the Lord and his weapons of indignation to destroy the whole land. Well, for the day of the Lord is at hand. It will come as destruction from the Almighty. Therefore, all hands will be limp. Every man's heart will melt, and they will be afraid. Pangs and sufferings will take hold of them. They will be in pain as a woman in childbirth. I will make a mortal more rare than fine gold. Sorry, I skipped down a little bit. That's verse 12. I will make a mortal more rare than fine gold. Isaiah 21, verse 3. Therefore my loins are filled with anguish. Pangs have seized me like the pangs of a woman in labor. I am bowed down so that I cannot hear. I am dismayed so that I cannot see. Jeremiah 6:1, starting a little ways into that verse. Blow the trumpet. Skipping down a little bit. For disaster appears out of the north, and great destruction. I have likened the daughter of Zion to a lovely and delicate woman. Skipping down a little bit. They shall pitch their tents against her all around. Skipping down. Prepare war against her. Verse 24. We have heard the report of it, and our hands grow feeble. Anguish has taken hold of us, pain as a woman in labor. This is not, the people of earth are not acting this way because some rock mountain present in Jerusalem. This is not giving people this kind of anguish. Something is coming down out of above, like the North Pole. Something is coming, some massive thing towards the earth. Jeremiah 30, verse 6. Ask now and see whether a man is ever in labor with child. So why do I see every man with his hands on his loins like a woman in labor, and all faces turned pale? Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it, and it is the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. 17, a little ways into that verse, this is Zion. No one seeks her. They're afraid of this heavenly Zion. This is Zion. No one seeks her. 24, a little ways into that verse, in the latter days. Again, when are we talking about? In the latter days you will consider it. Micah chapter 4, verse 1. Now it shall come to pass in the latter days. Again, now it shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established on the top of the mountains. So, coming from above, some other mountain is established above the mountains of earth. Now it shall come to pass in the latter days that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established on the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and peoples shall flow to it. Skipping down a little bit. In that day I will gather the outcast. Speaking of the different harvest, such as the rapture. I will gather the outcast, skipping down, so that the Lord will rule over them in Mount Zion, from now on, even forever. Skipping down to verse 9. Now, why do you cry aloud? Skipping down. For pangs have seized you, like a woman in labor. See, some people are happy about this. People are flowing to this city. They're being gathered out for the Lord to rule over them in that city, but much of the world is in panic. Hebrews 12:19, referencing people in Moses' day at Mount Sinai. And the sound of a trumpet and the voice of words, so that those who heard it begged that the word should not be spoken to them anymore. The people that gathered around Mount Sinai and were commanded not to touch it, or they would surely die. Even at the bottom of the mountain, away from the base, just hearing God's voice from above the mountain and the tremblings and the earthquakes, that panicked them so much that they begged Moses that the Lord would not speak to them again, and that he would just speak through Moses. That they were terrified and did not want to hear it or see his presence. Skipping down to verse 22. But you have come to Mount Zion, and to the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, to an innumerable company of angels, and to the general assembly, another gathering, to the general assembly of the church of the firstborn, who are registered in heaven, in God, the judge of all, to the spirits of just men made perfect, to Jesus, the mediator of the new covenant. Revelation 6, verse 12, a little ways into that verse, this is the opening of the sixth seal that the Lamb opens when those judgments begin. He opened the sixth seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood, and the stars of heaven fell to the earth as a fig tree as a fig tree drops its late figs when it is shaken by a mighty wind. Then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place, and the kings of the earth, the great men, the rich men, the commanders, the mighty men, every slave and every free man, hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rock, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath has come, and who is able to stand? We see that nearly at the start of the day of the Lord, the veil is removed, and the people of earth can see the heavenly Jerusalem, that mighty city, and can see who's sitting on the throne. And just as the people at Mount Sinai were fearful, the people of earth are fearful to see him and hear his voice. Revelation 21:2. Holy city, New Jerusalem. This is, I'm not reading it. This is just my notes about it. In that verse, a holy city, a New Jerusalem, a great high mountain comes down, and it's 12,000 stadia by 12,000 stadia by 12,000 stadia in a cube, and within her walls is God, who has made himself a fortress. That's roughly 1,400 miles by 1,400 miles by 1,400 miles. It is a massive, massive city. It's roughly the size of the moon. Ezekiel 21:6. As for you, son of man, groan with breaking heart and bitter grief, groan before their eyes. And when they say to you, why do you groan? You shall say, because of the news that it is coming. Every heart will melt, and all hands will be feeble. Every spirit will faint, and all knees will be weak as water. Behold, it is coming, and it will be fulfilled. Luke 21:34. But take heed to yourselves, lest, skipping down a little bit, that day come on you unexpectedly, for it will come as a snare to all those who dwell on the face of the whole earth. Nahum 10:10. Desolation, desolation and ruin. Hearts melt and knees tremble. Anguish is in all loins. All faces grow pale. And Nahum, as well as a lot of those minor prophets at the end of the Old Testament, you should go read this, that at the approaching of the Lord, the earth begins to tremble and quake more because of his approach. Joel 2:6. It's basically identical to that Nahum 10:10 passage, except it adds some of the other signs we see from the New Testament. It adds, the signs in the sun, moon, and stars. Skipping down to verse 12. Yet even now, declares the Lord, return to me with all your heart. Skipping down a little bit. Rend your hearts and not your garments. Skipping down. For he is merciful and slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love. Still, even at that time, during the day of the Lord, all he wants is for people to believe and repent in their own hearts. And he's there with the mercy and love for those who do that. That's all he's asking for, that instead of them panicking and ripping their clothes and that kind of stuff, but not changing their mind about who they are and who God is. They're just upset at the situation. They're still not really changing their beliefs. Joel 2:30, skipping down in a little ways into that verse. Before the great terrible day of the Lord comes, skipping down, and it shall come to pass that everyone who calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. For in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem there shall be those who escape and be saved. People escape to this heavenly Mount Zion, this heavenly Jerusalem. And I think that's a lot of the confusion in a lot of these passages. If you think about them closely, a lot of these in the Old Testament, when it's talking about Jerusalem, a lot of times like this, it's clearly about the day of the Lord and a heavenly Jerusalem, not an earthly Jerusalem. We just assume it's Jerusalem here on earth, but it's not. It doesn't make any sense. The people of earth are not this scared of uh, a little Middle Eastern city in the middle of Israel. They're it's not that. That's not what those passages mean. Now sometimes it is. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's, war, physical war here on earth, and God defending Israel on its behalf, and that is terrifying. But in other passages, it's clear it's not talking about an earthly Jerusalem, and the confusion comes because in Hebrew, Jerusalem is something like the city of God. So you're talking about the city of God here on earth, or the city of God in heaven, and that's, I think, the confusion. Isaiah 42, starting a little ways into the first verse. My elect one, in whom my soul delights, I have put my spirit upon him. He will bring forth justice to the Gentiles. And I encourage you to read that whole chapter. It's incredible forecast of Jesus' life. But skipping down, verse 6, and give you, we're talking about Jesus, as a light to the Gentiles, to open blind eyes, to bring out prisoners. Skipping down to verse 9, behold, the former things have come to pass, and new things I declare, before they spring forth, I tell you of them. Isaiah 43:13, and there is no one who can deliver out of my hand. I work, and who will reverse it? I work, and who will reverse it? There is no one there is no one who can deliver out of my hand, except Elohim himself. No one else, no other entity. You either are delivered by him, the only deliverer, the only redemption, or not at all. Isaiah 44:6-8, Yahweh is Israel's Melech, King, and Goel, Redeemer. He is Yahweh Sabaoth, the Almighty Lord of Hosts. This is what Yahweh says, I am the first and last, and there is no Elohim except me. If there is anyone like me, let him say so. Let him tell me what happened when I established my people long ago. Let him predict what will happen to them. Don't be terrified or afraid. Didn't I make this known to you long ago? You are my witnesses. Is there any Elohim except me? There is no other rock. I know of none. Isaiah 46:5, and then 9-13. I am I'm Elohim. From the beginning I revealed the end. From long ago I told you things that had not yet happened, saying my plan will stand, and I'll do everything I intended to.